Welcome to Your City Connections, where you get to meet entertaining and informative guests. Guests such as an artist with a brush or with a camera, and guest with a violin. City Connections, providing insightful interviews with favorite son Lieutenant Governor Todd Lamb. To city commissioners, the mayor. Interviews with a rodeo queen, to beauty queen, and even a NBA player. Now, join Steve Kime as he discusses another engaging topic on City Connections.
Hello, I'm Steve Kime, and welcome again to City Connections. I appreciate you joining us today. And I often say this, that man, I'm so thrilled to have our special guest with us today. Well, it's another true statement. I am so excited to have as I call it, a great American and a patriot. My special guest today is a helicopter pilot that served in Vietnam, flew over 1,000 missions, and gave so much of his time, energy, effort, and life to serve this great country. His name is Bob Ford. Bob, yes, welcome to the Enid Television Network studios.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you being here today. You were born in Shawnee, is that correct? Okay. I have a little bio, Bob, as we start right here. Your father was president of the Shawnee Milling Company. You graduated from the school that I went to, University of Oklahoma, so we have that in common. Boomer Sooner. And then after you graduated from OU, off to Vietnam. And can you tell us about, maybe a little bit about yourself at that time? You said earlier that you were just really focused on serving our country. So you graduated from OU and you're on your way to Vietnam. Kind of tell us about that time period. And this was in 67, is that correct?
Well, I graduated in 1966, okay. and I trained a year, and I was in Vietnam within a year after I graduated from OU. But during my junior year of ROTC, advanced ROTC, I asked that question to an instructor, what would be the best way to serve my country? And he was an ex-military platoon leader, and he, without hesitating, said, be a helicopter pilot. And I thought, that's it. I'm going to do it. I knew I was going to go to war. I wanted to go to the Vietnam War. And he said, be a helicopter pilot. And I made up my mind. And at that time, it was a turbulent time. And it was beginning more and more of the protest, like any war,
sure.
I'm sure. But when I see the films of that time, I don't even remember seeing what was going on. I was so focused on my training and going over and serving my year of combat as a pilot that I honestly ignored anything that was going on other than what was in front of me.
Bob is the author of the book entitled Black Cat 2-1, as you can see right here, and that you can pick up in your local bookstore. And we'll have some information on our screen later on where you can contact Bob personally, where he can come to your civic club or to your school to speak. But it's the true story of a Vietnam helicopter pilot and his crew. And I met Bob over, say, a month ago, and he provided a copy of the book for me. And then I took it home that weekend and read every bit of it. And my wife couldn't understand why I was so glued to this book. So it's a great read, and I appreciate Bob putting down those experiences in Black Cat 2-1. So, Bob, the question is, what inspired you to write this book?
Well, ever since I hit American soil after I came back from my tour, the first thing that came through my mind was, I can't believe I made it. That was number one. Sure. But then number two, every day I thought of my tour and my men and our missions every day of my life. And I knew in the back of my mind I wanted to somehow honor not only the aircraft that we flew, the wonderful, incredible machine, the UH-1 Huey, but I also wanted to honor the men I served with. They were just such dedicated men. And I knew the best way to do it was write the book. And when I went to a third grade class in 1992, the teacher grabbed me by the arm when I was leaving the classroom and said, Bob, people need to know. You should write a book. And I thought, well, you know what? I think I just better do it. And my kids didn't know what I did. They had no idea what I did because I never took them aside after going out quail hunting or shooting baskets in the backyard and say, okay, girls, let's go over here and sit down and and I'll tell you a few war stories. Well, that never happened. Of course it didn't happen. And so they knew I was in the service and they knew I was proud, but they didn't know any details at all. And so I started out and I got mission accomplished. I got it done.
Very good. And again, the name of the book is Black Cat 2-1. As you can see, ladies and gentlemen, on behind the screen, behind Bob, you see that Black Cat logo. And I'm the proud owner of a black cat at home. He's solid black. And but anyway, why don't you tell us a little bit, our viewers, Bob, what's that logo mean? And it's got 3 legs, and why the black cat?
Well, the 3 legs on the black cat, well, for simplicity of design, you have 4 legs and it just gets kind of complicated, but the 3 legs is for simplicity, but the black cat was our nickname of the 282nd Assault Helicopter Company that I was a member of. It's just like Enid Plainsman or Chisholm Longhorns. It's the 282nd Black Cats. And when my commanding officer came to pick me up when I was assigned, I didn't know who he was. I didn't know anything about it. All I knew was this helicopter was coming in, and it had the big full moon with a black cat on it. And I thought, well, if there ever was a war machine that looked like a war machine, that was it. And I'll be darned, he stepped out and said, "Are you Lieutenant Ford?" And I thought, man, things are starting out right.
Very good.
And the name of the book is Black Cat 2-1. And when you become a commanding officer and also an aircraft commander, then that is very, very important. You're given a call sign. And so it's very simple. The title of the book is my call sign when I became an aircraft commander. And Black Cat, of course, was the nickname. I was assigned to the 2nd Flight Platoon, and there's the 2, and 1 was available, and so I chose 1, because I thought it sounded the neatest, to tell you the truth. And so I was Black Cat 2-1. And that's the reason for the name of the book.
Well, we appreciate you taking time to put it in print and writing this. And again, this is what it looks like, and we'll refer to it throughout our show today. Bob, from July 67 to July 1968, you flew over 1,000 missions in Vietnam to protect and rescue troops that are on the ground. And this is an important number to be mindful of, that noting that 2,197 helicopter pilots, 2,717 crew members were killed. What kept you focused and motivated? And did you ever think that you may not make it home of those over 1,000 missions that you had?
Well, I didn't know about those statistics until you read them, but we were told, especially where we were in that part of the country, that we had a 1 in 5 chance of being a casualty, either killed or wounded. But that never stopped us at all. It never stopped us. We never even really thought about it that much. But the last part of your question was,
just what kept you focused,
kept us
and
focused?
motivated on the mission at hand?
Simply, our mission was so important, and we were needed so badly in every aspect of that war. And anytime we had a call over the radio, whether it be from a forward air controller or the men on the ground, instantly you went into that combat mode and you knew that you had to get it done. And as far as taking hits or getting wounded or getting killed or anything like that, it didn't even enter into it. All we knew was we're going to complete this mission. And somehow, some way, it didn't matter the enemy condition or the weather. We knew we were going to go and get it done. And being focused was actually not that difficult when you consider everybody was like myself. We were all cut about the same. We were all volunteers. Everyone in aviation was a volunteer pilot, and the crew chiefs and the gunners were volunteers. They had to be volunteers to come up and fly in my detachment, in my area of operation. So we were highly motivated guys, and it didn't bother us at all to make contact with the enemy. Matter of fact, we looked forward to it.
Well, one thing that I really enjoyed about your book is that you kind of set the stage with each chapter by providing a letter from home, because each chapter begins with a letter from home, based on real letters that you had written to your wife, Diane, and also to your parents, and also, I guess, to your brother as well. And I wanted to read I picked out a couple of these that I want to read real quick, and then we'll keep on going. This is chapter 7, and the letter is, everybody carries an M16 in the helicopter. I sometimes carry the M79 grenade launcher. You know, war can really be funny. Not a day goes by that something doesn't happen that's actually funny. I love your letters. Put some perfume on them. Oh, yeah. And this was dated September 13, 1967. Yeah. And then the other one I want to read that I enjoyed was, this is from December 2nd, 1967. This is to your dad and to your brother. You said, and I believe this is chapter 12, we are about 30-minute flight time from the DMZ. I live in the MACV compound, so we're pretty safe. There are about 200 of us. The only trouble is that the VC like to mortar us on a regular basis. I'm getting good at scrambling out of bed, grabbing my flak vest, helmet, and M16. By the time the second round hits, I'm in the perimeter bunker. And you asked what I'd like for Christmas. The only thing I could possibly need would be some foot powder, some toothbrush, a toothpaste. I just thought of something else. How about some canned fruit, but no apricots? And again, this is dated December 2nd, 1967. And ladies and gentlemen, each one of the several chapters in Black Cat 2-1 start with that personal letter of home. So my question is, Bob, why did you include those letters to start the chapters out?
Well, the letters were very important. When I came back, of course, everyone were saved, and they were important to write in the book because it gave me a chronological order of what I was feeling exactly at that time. Mm-hmm. And even though those excerpts of letters might be from 2 or 3 different letters, they were exactly word for word how I felt and what I wrote. And the first one you wrote, the last thing I said, put some perfume on it. Yeah. Every soldier that's ever been to war or been will know exactly what I mean, because the war consumed you so much that the only time you had a chance to think about home or even consider thinking about home was when you got to write a letter. And it took me about 3 days to write a letter because you just didn't have time. And if I wrote maybe a half a page a night, that would be it. But those were exactly how I felt at the time. And it gave me a quick little time to be thinking, well, what's it like back home?
Sure, sure.
And being what I said there to my dad and my brother was a little bit different than what I wrote my wife, in that I only wrote my folks 13 times. I didn't really have that much time to write them. But I had somebody say, your letters sound just exactly the way you wrote the book. I said, well, I didn't know that. And he said, yeah, that's exactly how you wrote the book.
Well, I really enjoyed that. It's a special touch, and it really set the stage for the chapter that you're getting ready to read when you get this real live letter from home, or writing to a letter to home. My special guest on City Connections today here on the Enid Television Network, Bob Ford. Bob has written the book Black Cat 2-1, the true story of a Vietnam helicopter pilot and his crew. We're going to talk more about the book, a little bit more about his missions, and also what Bob's involved in right now. So stay with us here on City Connections. We'll be right back. Thank you for staying with us today on City Connections. My special guest is my new hero, Bob Ford, and I call him a great American because I have the privilege of meeting a lot of men and women that have served our country, that have given so much, and Bob is one of those, and he's written the book entitled Black Cat 2-1. I encourage you to get a hold of a copy of that. And Bob, in your book, there's this statement, and it says, kick the tires, light the fires. Why don't you give us that? I have a good idea what that means, but tell our viewers what that means.
We would say that before we started the helicopter. And actually, in flight school, you were taught to always yell clear to make sure everybody was clear of the main rotor blade, because you're getting ready to light the fire in the turbine engine of the Huey. And when the rotor blade starts around, of course, you want everybody clear. And so that was kind of an offshoot of that. And we'd say several different things, but one thing we'd do was kick the tire and light the fire. Well, we did light the fire in the turbine, that's true. But we had skids on the helicopter,
sure.
Certainly not tire. tires, but it sounded kind of cool. That's the only reason we said it. And we also thought that those guys that flew those high-performance aircraft, I thought, well, maybe they'll say that. Maybe they say, kick the tire, light the fire. We ought to ask some kid from Vance or an instructor pilot from Vance if that's true. But that's all, just because it sounded cool, that's all.
This may not be a fair question, and I apologize if it's not, but can you just kind of give us, maybe in general terms, a typical day? And that's probably the wrong phrase, typical day, but while you were serving during that year and over 1,000 missions as a helicopter pilot, can you kind of talk us through a day?
I'd be glad to, and you're right. I'm glad you prefaced that because it's probably not a typical day, because that's how I would have started my answer. But the day started very early, what we call morning nautical twilight. In other words, it's still dark. And we would pre-flight the aircraft, and while we're getting everything ready, the crew chief would spend at least 30 minutes going over every intricate part of that aircraft, every push-pull tube, every nut, every safety wire, every travel of all the mechanisms. And we would start out, first thing we'd do, we'd get up in altitude and make radio contact with a forward air controller, because they were always in the sky. And their call sign was Cat Killer, and we'd say, Indy Cat Killer, is Black Cat 2-1, radio check, how do you read? And they'd say, you're coming in Lima Charlie. And that meant loud and clear. And said, roger that, do you have anything for us, an emergency? And they said, no. I said, okay, we'll be staying up this frequency. And we switched over to the FM frequency of the guys on the ground. And we'd make a radio contact with the one that we were designated to go fly for. And we knew approximately where they were, make radio contact and say, are you in the same position as you were the day before? And they'd say yes, no, or they were take a couple of clicks to the north. But we'd say, well, how's your situation? And say, well, we need some help. And said, all right, I'm 10 from your posit. That means 10 minutes from your location. Be prepared to pop smoke. And they'd pop smoke and we'd come in, and at 02, we'd call back again and say, where is your enemy? And they'd tell us where it is from smoke, and we'd come in hot if we needed to. That means coming in, we'd be shooting the whole time to keep the enemy's head down while we picked up the wounded. Right. And then from then on, we'd work with them. And then if we got them squared away, we'd be contacted by another ground unit, or the forward air controller would get hold of us. Very easy to get hold of us. All they had to do was come up the emergency frequency and say, any Black Cat in the vicinity of Quang Tree, come up uniform. We had a pre-designated frequency on UHF, and we'd hit that and we'd say, okay, what's up? And say, where are you? And we'd tell them where we were, say, we need you over here, and they'd give us coordinates of where to go. And it was that all the time. Sometimes we'd fly as many as 4 missions in an hour. Oh. It was a full day, and it didn't stop then. We had post-flight, and then we had fill out the logbook, and then always had a meeting with all the pilots and their hooch, where they lived, and we had a meeting and go over everything we did. And then we'd have to report into company headquarters on the landline, and then I had to report to the commanding officer of the MAC-V compound, who was a full colonel, and I'd be standing tall in front of him sometime as late as 10 o'clock at night. And he wanted to ask me questions about everything that went on in the area of operation. It was very, very busy. We were going all the time. We very seldom saw each other. We were by ourselves, or what we called, and I refer to in the book a lot, about being single ship. But we always knew how to get hold of each other through the emergency frequency.
Let me ask you this, Bob. It's been nearly 50 years in that vicinity. Do you stay in contact with those that you served with, since it's been that long?
I do. Some of them are incapacitated, okay. and 2 have died since then. Okay. And so there's only 2 pilots and probably 3 crew chiefs that I stay in contact, but not regular. But when we talk, it's wonderful.
It's an amazing that the calendar keeps going quicker, doesn't it? Let's go back to the book for just a moment. Yeah. How do you hope this story impacts readers, including former Vietnam vets and family and friends, as well those who know a little bit about the war? Again, what is your hope that your book does? Well,
I hope I'm representing all the Vietnam vets. I hope this is, and I know it's a typical story of helicopter pilot, even though we were in a unique place and at a unique time. It's still, we all were cut about the same. And we all served with honor. Every one of us were volunteers. But I hope all the Vietnam veterans will give them an impetus to tell their story. And I think when they read this, they'll say, man, that's what we were like. And they'll go to their children, their grandchildren, and say, this is what we were like. But that's what I want to get from this book, is that I want everybody that served to read it and know that their story needs to be told.
So let me kind of piggyback onto that. Based on what you've said, what is the primary takeaway of the book?
The primary takeaway of my book is that the men that I served with and all the men that I saw, without exception, that I saw in Vietnam, served with honor.
Okay.
Every one of us did.
Very good. My guest today on City Connections, Bob Ford, lives in Oak Keene and Enid resident. You see him throughout the Enid community quite often, but author of the book Black Cat 2-1. I encourage you to get a copy of that. It's a great read. Again, a true story of a Vietnam helicopter pilot and his crew. We'll be back with some final questions with Mr. Ford right after this. Thank you for staying with us on City Connections. Again, thank you for staying with us on City Connections. I'm Steve Kime. My very special guest today, Bob Ford. Bob from Oak Keene, and also kind of a Enid resident, as much time that you spend in Enid as well. And also, we kind of have a mutual friend, Doug France, that we see from time to time. I believe you were in Vietnam and you ran into Doug, or Doug ran into you?
He did. He sought me out. He knew I was there. I had no idea he was there, much less a Marine lieutenant. And he sought me out when I came back from a mission. I was on the tarmac, and all of a sudden I hear this, hey, Bob. And I look over and I said, my gosh, it's Doug France. I looked over and he looked like I don't know if anybody knows Doug France, but if you had a dictionary, I always tell people that if you looked at Marine in a dictionary, you might see his picture in there, because he looks like a Marine, and he still conducts himself like a Marine. And I saw him and I had a nice little conversation right there, and it was so nice to just stop from thinking about the mission and what's going to happen probably in the next 30 minutes and talk to a guy that I knew. And not only did I know him, I liked him.
Matter of fact, I talked to Doug yesterday, and he's still Mr. Marine, you know.
Well, so I believe it. Yeah. It's instilled in him.
Well, Bob, following your discharge in 1969, you moved to Oak Keene to head up the Oak Keene division of the family flour milling business. And again, I think it kind of started with the Shawnee milling.
It did.
And you still actively manage that today. So tell us about your life today, if you would.
My granddad started the Shawnee Mill. I'm very proud of that, a year before statehood in 1906. And when I got out of active duty, my dad wanted me to go to Oak Keene and learn under a manager that had been with the company for years and years and was a personal friend of my granddad's, and then come back to Shawnee. Well, I like being on my own, and I enjoy the small town, northwest Oklahoma. And I hit the ground running. I only took 5 days off, had a brand new daughter that was born while I was still in the Army. My last year I was an instructor pilot, and brought her out, and absolutely have loved every minute of it. I love the small town, I love this part of the state, and every day I've been blessed by not only the town but the people. And the company that is part of the Shawnee Mill, the Oak Keene Mill, is doing business as Oak Keene Mill. We are Shawnee Milling Company. I'm very proud of every person there. Every employee does their job better than I could ever do their job.
Sure.
They really are wonderful. But I've participated in everything athletically, civically, religiously in the town, and have coached a lot of the kids at softball, the boys basketball, all volunteer. And I have enjoyed every minute of it. And
Bob, why don't you tell us, and you've told me off camera that, and it's obvious, one of your passions is speaking to the old kids, the third graders, you know,
True.
to young people and to students. How can people get in touch with you as they're watching the show today, Bob, and they go, you know, we want Mr. Ford to come to our classroom or come to our graduation or even Kiwanis Club or Rotary or something like that. How would people get in touch with you, Bob?
Well, I enjoy talking about the men I served with, mainly.
Sure.
I really do. And if I can get that point across, I'd like to do it. And when you said third graders, the reason I always like to refer to the third graders is that they are just so uninhibited and will ask you anything. And they have such respect for each other. And they just at one question at a time, and I enjoy them a lot. They are very, very good about asking questions. But I have talked to the AMBUCs here. I have talked to several schools. OBA has asked me. They were wonderful. You can imagine what Dallas Caldwell, what kind of school Dallas Caldwell runs, and they were just wonderful. But several schools have asked me to come talk, mainly to their history class, and I like that because they're very interested and they are engaged in questions. But to get hold of me, that my company phone number is the 580-822 and then 4411.
Okay.
And one of the secretaries will answer. They always know where I am, and we can get together on something like that.
Very good. Well, we encourage you to contact Bob and have him come to your group to speak. Bob, when you autographed this copy for me, and that's always a special touch when you get an autograph from the author, you said to me, and of course you've got Bob Ford, but you have the inscription, "I would do it again." Tell us about that statement.
The editor that was assigned to me said, "You don't have a good closing in this book. Would you spend some time and give me a better closing?" And it took me a full week to write the last page. And when I wrote the last page of that book, I had all the men in front of me visualizing everyone I served with. And they wanted to approve every word I said. And I said it, I think, just exactly how they felt. And the last thing I did, I said, well, I wrote it, and I'm glad I did it. And they would have said, well, boss, you did okay. It's not bad. It's a pretty good book for a lieutenant. I know they would have kidded me. Yeah. I know every one of them would kid me. And then I would have said to them, well, I'll tell you what, I'd do it again with you guys. Yeah. And when first time I had the privilege to give a book to somebody and write it, I had asked my daughter, how should I sign it? She said, Dad, put the last line of the book. I said, my gosh, sweetheart, that's exactly what I'll do. And it's true. Every one of us felt the same way. We'd do it again for our country.
Well, that's the way I certainly feel of visiting with you and interviewing you. I'll do it again, you know?
Thank you. Well, thank you.
So it's been quite an honor. Bob, you're well-versed about challenge coins, and the City of Enid has a coin, if you will, and there's 3 words on it that says boundless, vibrant, and original, and that represents the Enid community and the people. But I look at those 3 qualities and I think about your service to our great country, and I just want to give this to you.
Thank you, Steve.
And you know all about challenge coins,
I do.
More so than I do.
Oh,
but it's our way from the Enid Television Network to say, Bob, thank you for your service to our country. Thank you for being here today on City Connections, and thank you for sharing your story about Black Cat 2-1.
Total honor for me. Thank you, sir.
And come back anytime you want. I know you're in the vicinity, so you're welcome here at ETN.
I'm going to the Y right now and swim a few laps.
Okay, very good. Well, go down and back for me, okay? Okay, all right.
Thank you, sir.
You bet, thank you. And thank you for joining us on City Connections. I hope you've enjoyed our time with Bob Ford today, and give Bob a call and he'll come and visit with you and tell you more about Black Cat 2-1. Again, thanks for joining us on City Connections. I look forward to visiting with you next time with another special guest. Until that time, make it a great day.